Talk to a guy who's a very, very established writer. Me writing, I've written things myself, and writing tends to serve a couple purposes for me. We'll get into the types of writings and stuff like that later, or types of writers later. But writing is very, very therapeutic for me. The times I've written, it really has been to get me to deal with different things and purge, and it's therapeutic and all those types of things. But we don't steal thunder. We're going to talk to a guy who has a unique niche, if you will, in writing because he's a man, first of all, and then he's a retired military guy, just like myself. But I'm not going to steal his thunder. Without any further ado, I'm going to say hello to him, Mr. Lonz Cook. Hello, Mr. Lonz Cook. How are you?
Hey, Doctor, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's so good to talk with you. And then before we both, get going here, let me just say thank you for serving. You're a Gyrene, I mean a Marine, and thanks for
Yeah,
your
first to
service
fight.
to this great country of ours, man.
Well, thank you for yours as well. And yes, first to fight. We Marines always think that we have that mentality that hitting the beachhead, you got to make the mission.
Hmm.
Whether you come home or not, you got to take care of things. So
Absolutely.
that's our mentality.
Well, great, man. I'm just sitting here going through your stuff, man, and wow. I mean, you've written 5 books that I know of, and talk to us about yourself. Where are you from, and man, how did you become this ground pounder, if you will, to a guy who spits and muses on the level that you have?
Well, let me tell you, there's 6 books now. There's a
Oh,
new book that
oh,
just released in
six.
November.
Okay.
Yeah, and so let me get to myself. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay.
My parents were, I'm a third generation preacher kid.
Oh, okay.
So you understand, I grew up in the church. I, my mother, my grandmothers are all Eastern Stars. And so that religious background is very deep.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
They were also teachers. My grandmother taught preschool and elementary school so up to age of 85. So she taught like 3 generations.
Wow.
So it was an amazing experience growing up in Augusta. When I joined the Marines, well, before I joined the Marines, I was writing. I was writing little things, not really understanding what I was writing
Okay.
or how I was writing. So my voice was there. My storytelling ability was there. And since my storytelling ability was developed at a young age, it kind of followed through with my writing. So I didn't understand about becoming a writer when I was a young man. Even though I thought about it, I thought about things because I used to read the Reader's Digest and the comic stuff when I was little, very young, 8, 9 years old. And my mother used to say, you always have a way of telling stories, kid. She used to tell me about that too. So my writing and storytelling ability developed as a young man. As a Marine, I wrote a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
While, like you said, your writing was therapeutic. Well, so was mine because I kept a diary as a young Marine.
Right. Right.
Every kind of event, every deployment, on the middle of ships. Back then, those ships were not capable like they are today, where you get on the internet and have everybody's got a laptop and those type things. It was pen and paper. So I found myself writing my notes there, as well as writing love letters home for other guys. So I used to do that for them too. So my writing kept developing, and as a Marine, I kept growing and writing, and I worked on general staffs, and I did a lot of other things, planning wars and those type things, and teaching school. So my writing has been a part of me all my life.
Well, that's interesting, man. You said you used to write love letters for your fellow Marines. That's quite a
Oh yeah.
novelty to have in place. I mean, my thing was I used to cut people's hair when they needed it. I never wrote stuff for people.
Yeah, so when you're in the middle of nowhere and you have nothing else to do, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's either read a book or write something or cut hair or everything. Everybody becomes functional one way or another in support of each other. And my skill was, yo, dude, you got to write a home letter.
Mm.
What do you want to say? I'll tell you how to say it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those type things.
Well, man, it's interesting because I'm not sure, were you officer or enlisted?
I was enlisted.
Yeah, so was I.
I was enlisted.
And they didn't expect us. I mean, we weren't supposed to be the smarter thinking type or side of the equation, if you will. So it was rare for us to be able to articulate and have that intelligence. And a lot of us were smart enough, like you are, obviously, to get that education while we were there and serving the country at the same time. So, how much real combat did you experience?
I was one of the first deployed to Desert Storm,
Wow, wow.
and so I experienced some real close combat. Some things I don't try to remember, and that actually they came out in one of my novels, Cross Expectations, because
Okay.
I had to write a scene on opening scene where this character went to Angola and got involved in a civil war conflict, and he wasn't supposed to, but I had to write the scene and make it as real as possible.
Right.
So I pulled into some of my true life experience, and I put that in a novel, and that was really hard for me because it was reliving some of those things I wanted to forget.
Oh, that's interesting, man. Because a very real and constant, almost epidemic type of illness that post or military guys experience is the post traumatic stress syndrome. Correct?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes.
So disorder, excuse me. So and so now let me, and I'm not going to get too far into this because I really want to focus on your work and some of the successes
Okay.
that you've had. Do you believe that your writing is keeping you from remembering the things that you said you tried to forget, and is that one of the ways that you're actually coping with this?
Partially, and I'm going to say partially because when I talk to my psychiatrist,
Hmm.
he says, "You're a busy man. The way that I handle my disorder is staying busy.
Right.
It's not that way. My focus is on multiple things. I never sit down for 1 minute to allow myself to go into those memories. So writing is a part of it,
That's
and
good.
it's one part of it. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
running a business is different. So
yeah, that's true, man. And then like self awareness, I think is probably the most important ingredient, if you will, to curing any illness, no matter what it is. You have to be very, very aware of what it is and that you actually, in fact, have it, and you know how to
amen to that.
handle getting the cure. So that's very
Yeah,
impressive.
amen to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you've
thank
done
you.
no problem. You've done 6 books. So how long did you stay in the military totally?
I did 20 years.
20.
I did 20 years as a Marine, right? And um, I went from working on a line unit to instructing school, being a recruiter, to also being in a general staff, writing plans for what we call FMF, Fleet Marine Force Atlantic or Pacific.
Let's see.
So I work for 3 stars
Wow,
on a general staff.
that's great.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing I would share is that just being in the military myself is that I think, and this is something that a lot of people who haven't served or haven't progressed in the military beyond that first enlistment, if you will, is that you essentially have to become a jack of all trades, even though you have a specialty that you're assigned and expected to do. You're oftentimes expected to get in and help in where you fit in. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things I think that's a true blessing, if you will, in addition to the discipline you
Well,
learn by being in the Marines or in the military in general.
I totally agree with that. As a matter of fact, after I retired from the Marines, I became a project manager in technology firms.
Uh-huh.
So when you start leading a group, we're so focused on self
Hmm.
that we don't become flexible or a jack of many trades, but we can aid others or give assistance where needed, so the job is done. That's one thing that we've lost in our society. So I mean, because you probably grew up like me, with the neighborhood. The black neighborhood was a combination of skilled people,
Hmm.
right? You
Yeah.
doctors, lawyers, technicians, mechanics, all within the same block. So if you needed anything, everybody was flexible enough to aid one another. Here in our society today, I think we've lost that.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're not a retired military guy, you really don't, or a military guy, you really don't understand that.
That's true. You don't
So
understand it. It's a constant melting pot, if you will, in environments. But listen, hey, Lonz, we need to take a quick break, and we're being enlightened by you, and we're going to talk more about your projects and more about you as we progress through the show. But this is Dr. Robert Benson with the Book of That Radio Show, Life and Spirit Online, only on the NASCAR Network. And we'll be right back.